Alright, everyone, this is the third episode of our Dark Souls 2 Crit Play series. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at Forest of the Fallen Giants. And I'm Woody, here with Kai.
Nice to talk to you all again. I really enjoy doing this. It's quite a bit of fun.
First thing I want to get into, it's not necessarily on this topic in particular, but in the ongoing vein of kind of looking at something different for each video of this thing, too, in addition to just the areas, easy mode in the Souls series. Something I keep seeing coming up, and I don't know, I figured an early area might be a good time to talk about this. So, what are your thoughts for an easy mode in the Souls series?
Tell me, Mr. Crowbar, would you play Amnesia without the lantern? Or would you play classic Resident Evil if there were not a finite amount of supplies? I mean, in the way that other games are stitched together by very focused, potent design elements, the difficulty is what ties together the Souls games. This is the...
So yeah, I think we've covered easy mode plenty at this point. So yeah, let's get into Forest of the Fallen Giants. I would kind of consider this the de facto first area of the game. I think if you talk to NPCs, this is the first area they recommend you go to, but I could be wrong on that.
I think if you talk... Who's the... I feel stupid now. The NPC... Salden, thank you. You read my mind. I think that if you talk to him, he advises you to go to Forest of Fallen Giants first, specifically. And yeah, obviously, like, the enemies you fight, the level design, it seems geared towards being a little bit more forthcoming than, like, the treacherous, tight walkways and the really large nights of Hades Tower of Flame.
And Forest of the Fallen Giants, it's definitely a tutorial area, too, because there's... Not necessarily for early area, not tutorial area, because you get a few really helpful items. There's 2 Estus Flask shards here, so you can immediately start upgrading your stuff. But more notable of that is, I think early on, the stretch between the first bonfire, once you get to Forest of the Fallen Giants, and the second bonfire is like basically every encounter type you will face in the entire game in that one stretch of bonfire. As I played through this before, and I was writing down like the different encounters you do. You have the first guy you can sneak up on, and then you fight 2 guys at once. Then you fight the guy who's shooting you with an arrow, and then the swordsman who attempts to sneak up on you when you rush him. The guy who gets up if you go down the little pathway and tries to trap you. And it's just this little microcosm of like, okay, this is all the shit you can expect to deal with.
The fact that it does that, and I never even thought of it like that, so very good observation, I think is very smart and clever design. Maybe some people will argue it makes the rest of the game seem arguably less creative. And I think there are some other encounter types that aren't as well reflected in those first few fights. But I see what you're getting at, and I would kind of agree. Yeah, I think that the game is... each fight feels unique from the one before it, and it's kind of setting you up and applying the player's expectations. And I think it's a good, do or die moment. I think that if you can make it through those first few fights, you probably have what it takes to finish the game.
In terms of visual design, Forest of the Fallen Giants, it definitely... I would say it sort of plays it safe for a fantasy game, in that it's not really wild and crazy, but it's an early area, so you don't really expect it to be. Like the sort of castle and forest theme that's usually kind of an early area in most RPGs. And I think it does it well. It's like I don't really have any complaints, but it plays it pretty safe, I guess.
I have some complaints. I think the area, most of it is hideous. It's one of the worst looking areas in the game, aside from the mining area of Brightstone Cove Sildera, like that clearing with the first bonfire.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, just the color composition with the lighting, and it looks so bad. The area near the Pursuer boss fight, that coastal area with the destroyed wall and the sword sticking out, that's cool. But like the most of the area, any of the dedicated castle and like actual areas with fauna and greenery, like not good looking. Level design wise, I think it's cool. It has some really interesting areas that are kind of fun to go through. I think it's a little lazy at times with enemy placement, especially the optional area where you get the hunter's hat and set, and there's like 40 of those Iron Soldier assholes. That's a little overbearing, especially for early in the game. Like, oh, I just beat this boss, I'm going to go unlock this door. And then you fight something that's like 10 times harder than the boss you just killed.
I mean, there's definitely some really ugly looking parts of it too. Just like the fire area below the Cardinal Tower fire, where you can like get down to with the key. That just looks like shit, especially from
really
far
bad.
away. Like the fire practically looks like Nintendo 64 fire.
It looks
like,
bad, and the repeating textures on the floor, like what? Which is ironic because, and I know that this has been hammered to death. But if you look at, I think it's the E3 build, or earlier version of that area, that part looks really good. Not just from lighting purposes, but just that down area. It looks way more intense and, you know, way prettier. That, I don't know, it feels more like they built that area with assets that were not designed with current, or now last-gen consoles in mind. So it's like, well, fuck, now we just gotta try and remake this from scratch and make it look as good as possible to match our almost like benchmark build for marketing purposes. I actually wonder if that's what happened. So
yeah, that'll be the E3 appearance and graphical issues of this game pre-release. That is something we will probably get into more depth in another video. That'll be the subject of something, because there's enough stuff to talk about there.
Man, this game, for better or worse, there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about in this game. So
I guess my thoughts about the visual design is it's such kind of a bland design anyway that I don't really feel like it could have looked that much better anyway. Like, I kind of feel like if they had made it look fantastic, I would have cared a little bit more, but not that much.
I don't know. I disagree. I think that you can look at Dark Souls 1, I think, objectively, in terms of technical aspects, the graphics are worse than Dark Souls 2. And Dark Souls 2 is obviously far more well optimized than the first game. I think that they probably just could have played with the lighting, make the area darker and more overcast, and that probably would have done it a lot better. I don't think that, say, Darkroot Garden or Darkroot Basin are stronger in terms of detail, but they are way more visually stimulating and engaging areas to be in. So I think that they probably could have gone for something like that. Maybe just playing with the lighting would have made the area more attractive. But at least I am talking way too much about the graphics in this area. But man, this area made a bad first impression, okay?
What I do think this area deserves praise for is I do actually think it has pretty good level design. In that it's a nice, complex area, especially compared to a lot of the other areas in the game. Forest of the Fallen Giants actually has some optional parts you can explore, as ugly as they may be.
That's true, yeah.
And that's nice compared to some of the extraordinarily linear areas later on, or Hades Tower of Flame, like we talked about in the last video. And I do think it deserves a little bit of praise for that. I kind of think it's a nice sort of in-between between Demon's Souls level design and Dark Souls level design of... It's a level like Demon's Souls, but it's got a more open world feel of Dark Souls to it, and I like that, and it's nice, and I kind of wish most of the rest of the game would have had that.
Yeah, I like that you can, there's a key, you can get an Iron Keep that unlocks stuff in Forest of Fallen Giants much later. That's cool. I like that there's incentive to revisit that area a couple times, and yeah, it is a pretty dense area in terms of design and event stuff going on, which I appreciate, yeah. Dark Souls, or the Forest of Fallen Giants level design, I agree, it is quite strong.
The other thing introduced here is Haid Knights for the first time. The Black Knights of this game. I don't really think I think that's pretty much what they were going for with those.
Yeah, I love these enemies. I think that design-wise, they're one of the coolest looking enemies in a Souls game.
I agree, yeah.
In terms of how they're implemented, I love that. Obviously, they're the way they sit. I can't think of any Souls enemy that is like that. You could arguably not call them an enemy. They're not going to do anything to you unless you attack them.
When I first played this, I was going off my rule of it's not hostile, so I'm not going to attack it. Because I just assume he's not talking to me for some reason. Mm-hmm. And maybe at some point he will be able to talk to me. I'll get a ring or something like that.
But you can lock onto him, which complicates matters.
So, I initially, on my first character, I didn't fight any of these guys until, I think I got to Shrine of Winter and killed that one.
Oh,
I was like,
wow.
okay, I gotta, yeah. So, okay, I gotta see this. Because I was convinced there was going to be something that was going to change my mind or convince me otherwise. I kind of dislike that you don't get a lot of their gear until New Game Plus, just because it's so cool. I would kind of like to be able to get it earlier, but pretty minor complaint.
Yeah, but at the same time, I like that there's cool stuff waiting for you after your first playthrough. I think how New Game Plus is handled in this game is great, and I gushed about that already in an earlier episode. But yeah, I like how the Hades Knights are implemented and their placement. There's only a few in the game, so every time you find one, it has this kind of like exclamation point type of stuff. Eventually, I think the Black Knights in Dark Souls 2 are a little diluted because you fight a handful of them in set areas, and then you fight several of them and they respawn infinitely at the end of the game. And then you've also fought the Silver Knights, which are not a far cry from the Dark Knights, or Black Knights, whatever. So, yeah, I like that the Hades Knights maintain their mystique throughout the course of the game, and even in New Game Plus when they drop really cool stuff. So
I like, I would have liked it if there was a couple more of them. I feel, because they're done after you get to Shrine of Winter. And I would have liked to see 2 or 3 more in some maybe remote places and later game stuff. But yeah, I think they're good enough as is.
Yeah, maybe it would be cool if maybe there was a Hades Knight boss, or a boss had a Hades Knight bodyguard or something. I don't know. Where if there was I would have been okay with 1 or 2 more maybe if they were utilized in a really unique and cool way. So.
You get to the Cardinal Tower bonfire. Visually, I think this is probably one of the coolest looking bonfires in the game. I really, really, really like this room. That's not really a point, but I don't know. It's probably one of the coolest bonfires.
I agree. The statue design is really neat. The breadth of the room. You have the tree that's growing in. Yeah, I agree.
The little area up top that you can explore and drop down.
Yep, it's a very cool area, and that room feels like there was a lot of love and dedication to making it seem unique, which is always nice to see. So,
and also in this room is Melentia, and I would have to say Melentia is probably one of my favorite NPCs. When I saw her, I did not expect to like her as much as I did, but I like her whole backstory, and I feel like it's a pretty accurate representation of what just a civilian would be in the Souls series. And I don't know. I feel like they kind of nailed her.
I agree. Dark Souls 1 featured a lot of, how do you put it, specialized characters that had some kind of weird quirk to them, or characters that were obviously soldiers or something like that. And then with Melentia, she, like you said, she's just a regular person, or was a regular person. Yeah, I like that her quirk is that she is meant to be maybe one of the more sadly relatable characters in the game. And I appreciated that. She was more unique than I expected.
I like that she's basically a grave robber, because that's kind of what they're implying with how she sells you everybody's armor after you kill them.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like that point, because it feels like a double unlock for getting armor, which is, I would just kind of like to get it if I just kill the dudes.
I think it's also meant to be a deterrence or a bit of a punishment for if you kill a quest NPC without finishing it properly.
Yeah.
So, you kill Lucatiel or Benhart, you can still get their armor, but at a cost.
I don't know, she's an interesting character, and she's a nice character. She's one of the few characters I feel like I actually like her, and I felt, as silly as it sounds, obligated to buy stuff from her when I talked to her, so I wouldn't have to hear her begging message. It's oh, okay, I'll buy 1 life gem. From the Cardinal Tower bonfire, you get into more of the level here, and I think this kind of starts this trend of what I feel is maybe the core design for a lot of the levels in Dark Souls 2, which is these... Basically, it's a hallway and then a large open room. And you get this design repeated a lot throughout the game. And when I say that, I mean it's a linear hallway, and then you get into a larger area with multiple levels, a whole bunch of enemies, and it's a lot more open. And it's kind of a more typical video game level design, but I really like it. Because it just lets each of those rooms is kind of a more unique scenario.
Yeah, it's also probably done for technical purposes. I imagine that the tighter hallways allow time to load the larger areas in between. So, but yeah, I overall I think it works.
But no, I don't know. It's a nice trend. I don't think it's bad or anything. But this is also where you meet Kale, the map maker guy, the guy obsessed with cartography. Possibly one of the longest conversation in Soul's history.
Yeah, you have to talk to him like 30 times to get the house key. And I knew it. Like I was like, oh, mashing X. There's got to be something to this guy, and he's a pretty middle of the road character. I think it's more so his relation to the other characters like Navlan or Creighton that makes him more interesting, or at least the things he says more interesting. There's not much to him. I think he's one of the earlier examples of someone losing their sense of self and memory when they're in Drangleic.
Focusing on something to try and keep themselves sane, in his case, cartography.
Yeah, and then you just kind of go and do everything for him, so... so there's Kale. NPC-wise, there's 2 bosses in this area.
Yes, there's 2 bosses in this area. Well, actually, there's another NPC, which is Pate.
Oh my god, how could I forget Pate?
Mild-mannered Pate.
Pete.
Who's probably one of my favorite NPCs, too.
Yeah, he's Pete from Shaun of the Dead. I forget the actor's name, but I'm sure Pate was
I wrote it down. It's Peter Serafinowicz.
Okay.
If you Google him, his personal website, like in Google, not even on the page, is how to pronounce his last name.
Oh, thank God. And I'm not crazy. I don't know if you've seen it, but his character's name was Pete in Shaun of the Dead, right? I'm not imagining that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
All right. I'm pretty confident that's why I named him Pate in this game.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
The story with him, too, is that he was a big Dark Souls fan and asked to be in Dark Souls 2.
Yeah, I remember he mentioned he wanted to do voice direction and wanted to act in it. He wanted to be involved, and I'm very glad he was, because he does play one of the more interesting characters in the game, and I like how he interacts with a certain other character that I guess we'll probably talk about later.
Yeah.
We'll
get into NPC quest lines. I think that's going to be a whole episode just for that.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess we don't have to talk about him too much, but it's interesting that you meet him, and he makes you work for the White Sign Soapstone. You talk to him, and you have to actually kind of go through this trap he talks about, and once you come out alive, he gives you the White Sign Soapstone. That's pretty easy to miss. Is there another way to get it?
I don't believe so. And what is cool about him, too, is his conversation will change depending on how you progress through that area, too.
Really?
Yeah, I tested this just before. Yeah, if you go in without talking to him, his conversation changes. And I think if you go in the upper area without talking to him, his conversation changes.
Oh.
Because he'll say, I was going to warn you about the trap, but you ran in without letting me tell you.
Huh. That's interesting. I did not know that. That's pretty cool. That makes sense. I love it when games account for that stuff. So.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We really like Pate, apparently. So
yeah.
Pate's a cool dude. We'll talk about him more later because he shows up a bunch. There's a couple of enemies here that... Because I played through this just a few hours ago before we were recording this. And there's a couple enemies in this area that I hate. And the first one is the spear-using hollow soldiers.
They were bad in the first game, and now it's like their shield protects them even when it should fucking not be doing that.
Their shield protects, like, the front 350 degrees of their body.
Oh my, they're so annoying.
And their spears have super magic tracking powers, too, and always stun you. I had more trouble with them going into this than I did with the bosses.
Yeah, the spear and shield guys are... They're pretty bad in Dark Souls 1 too, just because they're so apprehensive to attack you. And in Dark Souls 2, they just have like unpredictable, annoying attack patterns while still being apprehensive. And then they have this bullshit shield that, like you said, covers a disproportionately wide portion of their body, and it's like, ugh.
The other guys that I'm on the fence about, like, it's one of those things. Whenever they kill me, I always get mad and think they're bullshit. But I kind of like their design. Other than that, is the Ironclad Turtle Knights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know, I kind of think they're both just because they have, like, infinite stamina. And they never seem to get tired, and you don't really get much of a window to attack them, and I don't necessarily like that. Like,
I don't know. If you're fighting multiple of them, I would maybe agree, but like you can get into like a pretty like consistent pattern where you can hit them and then they retaliate with either like a slamming strike or a horizontal strike, and then you can just roll backwards and repeat the process, and it's pretty guaranteed.
because my thing is usually when I pick a weapon that I want to play through the game with, I will use nothing else but that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like for that they can be really annoying because it's like, oh, my weapon is so slow that I can't attack and then dodge by the time they are going to hit me again.
Yeah,
and
I use rapier, so rapier master race, no problems here.
All right, so Last Giant. Last Giant is the first boss of this area, and I would say kind of the first boss of the game.
I think it's what most players will fight the first time, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's what most players will fight the first time, even though we didn't do it first for this video series. But, yeah, Last Giant. I like him. I like his design. I would compare it similarly a little bit to the Forest of the Fallen Giants about how I think he's not necessarily like an amazing boss compared to some of the cooler ones, but he is an amazing first boss. Because I think he's about as cool as complex as you can get for like early in the game.
Yeah, and I like that his attacks are damaging and punishing, and Demon Souls' first boss you are kind of intended to lose to. But like Phalanx and the Asylum Demon, all pretty simple bosses. I'm not going to say you wouldn't lose, but I think that in terms of difficulty, I like that there is a lot more. I would say play a lot more of the game before you get to your actual first boss in Dark Souls 2, and I like that he is, because of that, more challenging, and he has one of the best Stage 2 transitions I've ever seen for a boss.
Yeah. He gets so pissed off he rips off his own arm and starts attacking you with it.
Yep, I was a big fan of that. Yeah, and it kind of forces you to adopt certain strategies that you're going to end up utilizing for the rest of the game, and I think that Forest of Fallen Giants is pretty good at trying to make you iron out your play style to progress smoothly, and the boss is obviously quite a good example of that.
Overall, very well-designed boss. I would say probably one of the coolest intro cutscenes, too. I really like the creepy, faceless hole giants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are cool designs, I agree.
And speaking of giants, I also like the sort of fan theory that this boss is the Giant Lord. And that the reason he is so pissed off at you is because you killed him.
That is so cool. Although, to be fair, in that... Oh, well, we'll talk about that later. Giants' memories are a whole nother thing, but that's I never thought of that. That's a cool idea, though. Huh.
I don't really think there's, like, any evidence supporting it, but it's just one of those, it sounds cool, so I want to believe it's true. And then the second boss of this area is the Pursuer. Which,
we just talked about how cool Last Giant was. Well, let's talk about how cool this boss is. This boss is like a tiny little sandbox of a Dark Souls-like boss fight of possibilities, because you've got different little things that facilitate multiplayer play, and you've got different things that facilitate super high skilled play. And the way this boss moveset is designed in regards to what the player can do, in certain Dark Souls bosses, I'd be like, okay, sure, you could go fight Sif at level 25 if you wanted to, but I wouldn't really recommend it. The Pursuer kind of feels a bit like Gwyn in the regards that, if you're good enough, you can just parry almost everything. And and there are tools to help facilitate beating him at a low level, even if it is an overwhelming challenge, but it's not that unreasonable. So I think that Pursuer fight, in terms of design, is one of the best in the game.
So yeah, Pursuer overall cool design. Using the ballista to kill him is really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can beat him in his first appearance, and he won't appear as a proper boss, which is very kind of interesting design. Kind of a bummer that he doesn't appear in more locations.
Yeah, so I would definitely agree with that, because he appears here, he appears in the boss fight room for Smelter Demon, and then he appears in Dragonlight Castle, and that's it, right?
Yeah, and the Dragonlight Castle is only New Game Plus, so...
You can tell, too, that they've been wanting to do this enemy for such a long time in this series. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if having a enemy that follows you throughout the game and tries to attack you has been in, like, the design docs since Demon Souls, and they've just never got it right. Because they've mentioned that, I think Miyazaki's mentioned that at least 2 or 3 different times in interviews, like, leading up to the releases of these games, of, like, we want to have an enemy that will hunt you down. And I just think they keep trying to do it, and they can never quite get it right. And there's hints of it in each game. And I think we're probably going to see it in Bloodborne. I think that's, like, part of the whole design for that.
Yeah, Bloodborne is supposed to focus more on roaming enemy hordes rather than enemies spawning and staying in static locations. And it's funny you mentioned the hunting enemies. I remember Miyazaki mentioning, I think in the Design Works interview, that the Black Knights were supposed to roam the world organically, not hunting the player necessarily, but I think it kind of goes along with the design sense that enemies are kind of in areas, there's in certain ways, meant to be more natural, and I wish there could be a big, scary pursuer-like enemy that would actively hunt the player, like Nemesis style. And
just you occasionally get, like, a fog gate thrown up in an area, and oh shit, time to fight.
Oh yeah, it's kind of like you were being invaded by, Gaylord Schittler or something, but instead you have a boss that spawns to attack you. That'd be awesome. And then
maybe there's some kind of, like, resource tied to him. So you lose something significant if you get killed by him, but then you also gain something significant. Like in this, I guess it'd probably be like maybe you lose some human effigies if he kills you.
I would love that. It's a shame that Resident Evil 3 kind of pioneered the boss monster hunting you aspect, and I don't think there's any game that has done it as well, and it was like 15 years ago.
No, I don't really think so either.
So.
It's just such a cool concept, and yeah, it's like you said, no one's really gotten it. No one's really tried it, I guess, a lot since then either.
Yeah, I see comparisons drawn to it all the time with new games that come out. Like Resident Evil 6 was like, Ustanok, it's going to be like Nemesis hunting you, and Ustanok is a fucking shadow of the Nemesis. Like, it is a poor excuse. And then you have the Pursuer, who I think has elements of the lethality of Nemesis, but he just doesn't have the frequency, obviously. So, I mean, the first time he appears is terrifying. You're like, what the hell is this? But, yeah, after that, he's just a more, like, standard boss or enemy.
So, yeah, Pursuer is, again, one of those concepts that I think we both agree on. It's maybe could have been explored a little more, but is really cool as is.
Yeah, I agree.
The only way I really think the Pursuer maybe suffers is not his fault at all, is that we did talk about the high prevalence of Sword and Shield enemies in this game, and I would say Pursuer is sort of at the top of the list of well-designed ones for that, and he has the cool thing about how he floats, and he's very fast and agile compared to a lot of the other ones, but he maybe suffers a little bit just because his company is a bit common.
I agree, yeah. I think that he has, in terms of a Sword and Shield fighter, he's one of the most unique ones in the game. And he's very dangerous, but very fair. Like, I think he hits a very, like, tightrope balance act of being challenging and intense and fun, but fair. But yeah, he's kind of in a game that's a little bit diluted with enemies that are a lot like him.
So yeah, I think that about covers everything for Forest of the Fallen Giants. Let's see. We're going to be here next week, and I think we're going to do Lost Bastille next time.
Lost Bastille. That's an area. That's quite an area. That will probably take quite a running time to do. I look forward to it, though. I like Lost Bastille a lot.
All right, so yeah, we'll see you next week, everybody. Thanks for watching.
All right, see you later, guys.
Now, if you liked that, you might want to check out our crit play for Resident Evil 4. It's not with Kai, but it's the same format, so if you liked how this video worked, you might like that one too. And if you like Dark Souls, we have a full LP for the original Dark Souls, which my friend goes into playing blind, and I kind of guide him through it. And we also have an ongoing LP for Dark Souls 2. Kai also runs a few Dark Souls related things online, and I've tossed some links in the description of this video where you can check out his stuff.